quorum present. Guests and delegations, we have Mr. Lee Moore, one of our consultants with us today on the P25 project. Alex is out of town, so he will not be in attendance with us today. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So we got a Chief Booth joining us.
And Chief Booth.
Morning, sir.
All right, have a motion, the agenda.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, and that brings us down to the minutes of the previous meeting. Those minutes were emailed out for review.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion to approve. Any other discussion? In a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Brings us down to review the financial report.
Get my live stream stuff up and going, so now I'll go here and catch back up with y'all. All right, start on the revenue side. Everybody is caught up as far as our dispatch contracts, just in the flow of the way things got paid. The May payment from Blunt'sville posted in June. That's why theirs looks like a doubled and one missed. Snead is paying quarterly now, so it shows up on the forecast as a monthly, but it's going to reflect from here on as a quarterly. Long story short, everyone is paid up. As far as expenditures, I believe everything's mostly in line. That $14,000 in computers and software was our payment to Adam for his yearly maintenance and of our network and our telephone, our administrative telephone system. We've got split telephone systems. We've got an admin system and a 911 system. 911 system is maintained by RPSS and the admin by Stream South. I believe that was all that I had that I was going to point out as being out of the way. Anybody have any questions on any of those?
You don't have any bills in yet for that Lucent Lighting in Damage, right? That's July.
Correct. We've not done any, that was just last Friday, so we haven't done anything with it yet. For those that I've not talked to, we took another lightning strike last Friday night. Got the microwave facing this direction from Palisades and facing to Smoke Rise, and the IP switch. Same set of equipment that was fried. When was that other one? March, April, somewhere along in there. We just had gotten replaced again. So we're doing evaluation to figure out what our next step with that is going to be. I'm hesitant to get anything repaired if we become such a lightning magnet that it's just going to get fried every 3 months. So that'll be some of our grounding conversation we have in a few minutes.
Motion to approve the financial report. Second.
I have a motion and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, that brings us down to staff report.
Nothing substantial as far as staff report, just a lot of work on radio stuff, and that'll all come up in old business.
Okay. Any other discussion in staff?
We used to get reports on any kind of, what's what I'm looking for, staff reprimands or letters or anything. You know, when something went into a file, we didn't get names necessarily, we just got a report if somebody had been
Discipline?
disciplined in some way.
Style?
We never get anything like that.
Do we
never
have any
discipline
discipline?
anybody anymore?
I'm not aware of those reports being done, but I can
Way
start doing
back,
them.
way back then, we used to get reports of this discipline was done. We wouldn't, no names, anything, just let us know something was going on.
Okay. I've not done those since I've been here, so.
Yeah,
If you have any repetitive discipline,
well, I don't remember, it's just, looks like to me, staff, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chief.
I was just gonna comment, I've never known of a board, city council, being involved in reprimands if they were just paper reprimands that didn't result in loss of pay or loss of time. If you have one that's loss of pay or loss of time, then the mayor and council or board is made aware of it, because there's always a point where they can appeal it or.
Right, we are the appeal, and if we
Yeah.
do it,
That's
if we
been
do
my
it
fault,
ahead of.
keeping
Yeah,
those
I
isolated.
think that's an in-house, unless it's loss of pay or loss of
Right.
time.
So, I mean, that's why I was suggesting a repetitive disciplinary, we probably need to be made aware of it, but.
Yeah, that's why I kinda kept those isolated in my mind of, since y'all are the appeal process, then we don't need to,
You'd have a clean slate.
it doesn't need to be jaded,
Yeah.
All
but
right,
I'll do whichever y'all wanna do.
I'm already jaded anyway.
Is jaded and chafed the same thing?
We do have the Guardian tracking software that we pay for is an online employee management tool that we put write-ups, attaboys, attagirls, responder complaints, citizen positives, attendance, all of that is tracked in that tool. So we do have a method of doing that. Y'all just haven't been seeing it, but I can, if y'all choose, I can start doing something.
I don't think we need to go about unless it's something appealable that we're gonna hear.
Speaking for myself, I mean, the in-house stuff should be, I think, handled in-house, my opinion, but if there's a complaint from the public or from responders or whatever that is beyond in-house handling, I think we ought to know about that, but that's the only thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
all right. Brings us down to old business.
All right, this is, all three of these bullet points are gonna spin into one long conversation, so get comfortable, because Lee and I have got a lot from the last 3 weeks. We were scheduled to close on our tower acquisitions Tuesday. All of our paperwork, we couldn't quite get in line Tuesday, so it got pushed to Wednesday. Determined that the paperwork was still gonna take some more time, so it's now slated on the 30th. The 3 properties are titled, deeded, 3 different ways. One of them is in Jerry Head, one of them is in Jerry Head the second, one of them is in Blunt Broadband. There's nothing at the courthouse so far that we've been able to track down that Blunt Broadband was ever incorporated as a business. So, all of those things have gotta be satisfied before we can get clean title. Also, the Pine Mountain site, you owned it way back, right? Was there a Haynes that owned it at some point?
A Haynes?
A female would have been titled in somebody's wife's name maybe
I
or
don't
something?
think so. I bought it from David Young.
Okay, so you had it after David did,
I bought, yeah, I had it twice.
okay.
David had it twice. I bought it from David when I bought Total Radio up here. Then David bought it back from me because he was gonna sell it to Jerry.
Okay,
So, and Jerry had it, got it from David. So anything happened before David
There's-
the first time,
there's a mortgage to David from somebody, and I can't remember the name, that never got recorded as paid. So we gotta get with David and whoever that was to get an affidavit that mortgage is satisfied. So there's just several little paperwork things along the way.
Who, David Butts?
of David Young.
David Young, oh, okay.
Old Total Radio, David Young,
Oh, okay.
up in Arab now.
Yeah, I know.
None of them are things that are huge. It's just paperwork that we gotta get signatures on and stuff, so it's gonna take a couple of weeks to get that done.
Alex said basically it was just a cleanup filing process that we had to go through in order to get all the deeds clear so we could.
2 or 3 of these sales were done with quitclaim deeds and no back work done. And,
I know none of the ones we did in the back work.
yeah, we just wanna make sure we're getting
Yeah,
clean,
I agree.
clean title work done, formality stuff. It's not anything that's the deal breaker, it's just,
If you need me to get over there.
it's just
let me
time.
know.
So we're just gonna have to get some stuff signed with notaries and
So
move
who
on.
Palisade sign now, do you want to know?
The Pine Mountain
No,
side,
Pine
Oh,
Mountain.
Pine Mountain.
No, no, that's
so.
still Jerry Head, in other words, it was never put in JTM.
Well, when it was transferred from Jerry to JTM on those quitclaim deeds, all
Okay.
3 of them were in different names.
Okay, so this is clean, the title's gotta be cleaned up on
Yep.
price, okay.
Yeah,
No
We
problem.
need, we need something from Jerry saying that Jerry Head and Jerry Head the second are the same person.
Yeah,
And then we gotta find something that was the incorporation of
Is-
the
is-
business of Blunt Broadband.
Is Alex drawing this stuff up?
Well, I'm waiting on an answer from Jordan and JTM of whether or not he wants Alex to, or if his attorney's going to. So that's where that is. That should happen hopefully next week, and we'll get that paperwork printed and signed and ready to close on the 30th as we're currently projecting. So long story short, that takes care of the first bullet point there. And I'm gonna just turn the floor over to Lee and let him roll with our second bullet point of all of our conversation of implementation stuff and where we have gotten to with what our best path forward and figuring out how many of these best practices we can accomplish in getting this done.
Thanks.
Go for it.
So, I may ramble a little bit as we kind of go through this, because I want to make sure that we have a good grounding starting point, not grounding,
We gotta do that too.
not literally, a good point to start with about kind of where everything is, and then what Neil and I and some other people have been doing to try to get you as many options as we can. So as the original contract was envisioned and the original layout was envisioned, you're gonna have two transmitting sites. One's gonna be the County 11, that you just had that discussion, one's gonna be at Palisades. The tower here is not gonna actually have any transmitting equipment on it, it's just going to be the receiving point for your radio dispatch consoles in there. So the original contract had all of the radios in it, it had the RF transmitting equipment that was gonna be at those two sites, it had the radio consoles here, and it included one microwave link that was originally planned to go from, if I say anything wrong, please just remind me, Palisades to County 11. There was an existing link between 911 and Palisades, and there were some early discussions and maybe some assumptions that were made that district-provided connectivity, whether it be a microwave or some piece of fiber or whatever, from Motorola to this board, statement was made, you just need to be able to communicate from here to there, and life is good. And then the reality is that's not necessarily a factual statement. Motorola has minimum standards for transmissibility over fiber optic circuits, DLT ones, and microwave, that for them to warranty and honor their commitment on the product, that those methods of connectivity must meet. Long and short. The microwaves that were originally here, and I think one of them may have just gotten whacked, are primarily used for video surveillance, hauling internet to the sites, camera backhaul. There's one of them, I think, that is a secondary connection, maybe from Angion, simply because we're on an island right here from a fiber standpoint, in that Hotelco is the only provider that touches City of Montgomery in this area with fiber optic connectivity. Those particular microwaves do a fine job at what they do and what they were designed for. They do not meet the standards that Motorola requires for their connectivity. And so this is just a statement of fact. There's no pointing fingers, gnashing of teeth, it just is what it is. So when Neil called me, we sat down, talked to Motorola, talked to the team here, tried to figure out what's going on. What he asked me to tell you today, kind of run over what I did at the last meeting real quickly, is when you have a remote setup like this, and there are multiple counties that work like this today, and there are more counties joining the AIR system like y'all are joining the AIR system, the best practices and standards for any time that you are a remote site where you don't own your own core is that you have no single point failure that could cause your system to go into single site trunking mode or your radio consoles lose the ability to make transmissions out to the user. So typically what that means is if you have 3 towers, which you do, that you have a ring configuration so that each tower has 2 paths, one in and one out, that it can talk in and out of if one of those connections breaks. If they return Palisade, County 11, something makes that triangle, whether that's a microwave, or if it's a microwave, a piece of fiber. In your case, County 11 is the only other tower site that you have access to fiber optic connectivity to. Motorola is fine with, and will accept, the telco fiber optic connections that are available in the area. The original plan did not have that green connectivity. It had single connectivity out. And so that was a concern from a best practices standpoint, the fact that if County 11 is your point at which you hop into Warrior or whatever other Birmingham tower that's going to connect you to their core, drops, gets whacked, be all the above. These radio consoles can't talk. If the one fiber link that was going from here to County 11 dropped or went down for maintenance at 2 AM on whatever they have a regular maintenance window, you wouldn't be able to get back to Birmingham. So what we did is we sat down with Motorola, we sat down with Greg Silas and Robert and the team from Birmingham and said, hey, let's take a breath and let's see what would it take for us to try to get to what we ideally would like it to see. I'll lay that out. We'll assign some numbers on estimates that we believe it would take you to get there. And then y'all are gonna have to tell us, yeah, go do that. No, that's too much money. No, that's too much money. Well, then how much money are you gonna give us to do things? And then we'll come back to you with options that are based on that budget. So that's where we stand today. Is we've gone out, we've done site inspections on the County 11 site, we've done site inspections at Palisades, and we've done site inspections here. So I'm an R56 certified inspector through Motorola. I did a report and write-up of the 3 sites. We created a statement of work, I've talked about it the last time. There was a quote received from a group that does grounding on tower sites. And so those numbers came back to bring the sites up to minimum R56 requirements. So for the rest of you, Motorola's grounding standard is called an R56. And it is a 137-page document that tells you where you have to put a nut, where you have to put a screw, where you have to put a bolt, how you have to connect a green wire, everything. So for lack of further discussion, that's just what it is. The 3 sites that they are gonna install equipment, that is a requirement from their perspective for them to honor the warranty on the equipment. Those sites meet the current R56 standard, which is the 2017 version. So that was the first thing that we did, is we looked here and at the other 3 sites. The second thing we did was we tried to address single point connectivity issues. The simplest thing that we could come up with was to add a second microwave link from 911 to Palisades, to have a fiber optic link from 911 to County 11, and then have,
This is the old telco, fiber optic now. It's just a fiber, it's not a dedicated, what we used to call drive-through. It's not a dedicated fiber optic. Is it dedicated fiber from here to there, to no direct, no outside?
Trunk line, but
so it is not dark fiber.
Okay,
Okay, you can't afford that.
yeah.
It is a private switched fiber optic circuit. So a box in this building, a box in that building, and through the Otelco core, it goes from here to there. There's no internet on it, you can't hit Google on it, it is private connectivity.
Okay, it's a private,
It is private.
because I understand that's a real critical thing for Motorola.
It is, that and the specifications on jitter and.
Yeah,
nuts and
I
bolts.
understand that.
We get into that. So yes, sir, it is a private circuit between here and there. It is just like every engine circuit that delivers 911 calls to every 911 center across the state. It goes from here to there, and it goes through things in the middle, but nobody else sees it. There's no internet on it, there's none out there.
So what's the difference in being a private source versus a dedicated source that we can't afford?
In the fiber optic world, if we hired a company to come in and string a fiber optic cable from this building to a tower site, either hanging it on poles or digging it in the ground, We call that a dark fiber connection.
Okay.
In that it's just the glass is in the ground, and then we would actually install a device, a laser on both ends, and it lights the fiber. You've heard that term?
Yeah.
Okay. It's like an old dry pair. You are paying for 100% of the use of that, and you're paying for 100% of the installation cost, because you own it, you're responsible for it. We could get a company to come in and give us a quote for that. Above ground, if we had pole rights, it runs between $50,000 and $100,000 a mile. And then you're responsible for it, the other above.
That's not a need that we really have. My concern was
Right.
just the fact to make sure that we had proprietary control. I know we gotta go through a lot of, like the old dry pair.
I
You
mean,
had a
yeah.
dry pair, of course, you went through switches and shoes and everything, but nobody could access that and do anything additional to it. And that's what we get, okay.
So think of it as the new version of a T1.
Yeah,
A T1 was 4 copper wires that went from point A to point B.
One question, how's this gonna affect our console that's in the EMA office?
That's not within the scope of what I've been discussing, or nor was I asked to look at.
Yeah, not yet. That,
All that is in the EMA office is just a standalone base station radio on a power supply.
Okay, calls don't come in there now or anything?
So is that gonna be still gonna be a backup
It
system
is still a backup dispatch center.
in the event of some kind of catastrophic something? Okay.
And I didn't mean to kind of look puzzled, but
Yeah.
that wasn't in what I was asked to look at.
Oh, okay, I just didn't know.
My remembrance from long ago is that there was a single radio control station.
Right.
Control station, a couple
Yeah.
channels.
that could be as simple as taking
You take a mobile.
mobile and sit down in a cradle over there and reconnect that.
Sure.
we've pretty
Yeah.
well replaced that, haven't
Yeah.
we, with a van?
Between the
Yeah.
van and our being able to position here,
Yeah.
it's kind of obsolete, because there's no way that one individual person that can fit in that room can function all that we're doing now. So that room, with the exception of helping with storm overflow and EMA, EOC ops, that position's really,
But it'll have a P25 radio over there.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Didn't we purchase a remote dispatch thing anyway?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, a remote call taking.
Yeah.
So,
So good question, but the answer is, no, it's not dark fiber,
Okay.
but it is fiber.
And do what we need to do, yeah, that's my
We have
concern.
discussed that with the engineering team, they've given us their specifications, they have given us the minimum bandwidth requirements.
And we sent that document to Otoko, and Otoko said yes.
Right. So we
it can be done.
have done the footwork on that, and that is an option, okay? And the reason that was being discussed is every mode of connection has a failure rate and a failure point. Microwave is primarily Motorola's preferred method of communicating with its radio towers and its sites that have consoles. As you're painfully aware of, if sites are not built to the current standards and suppressed and be all the things we're about to talk about, it costs money, sometimes lightning makes its way in, power surge, whatever, and it goes poof. So what we tried to do to bring back to y'all is the best practices on how do you create a resilient radio system that is a public safety light. And I think Sheriff said this last time on board meeting. Yeah, this is a public safety grade, life critical platform that we're talking about. This board, at this point, has committed a sizable amount of money towards that for all the citizens of the county. So what we're trying to do is to bring to you and say, okay, to do that, these are the best case recommendations. This is gonna cost money. You may or may not be able to do all of these, but we're gonna start at Christmas, and then we can talk about what are options that may or may not be affordable at this point. So, the first thing is, we highly recommend, and it's highly recommended, that you have a ring connection from all of your sites. So that would mean that if we are here at 911, and we have a piece of fiber that goes to Palisades 11, and we have a microwave shot that goes to Palisades, and a microwave shot that goes from Palisades to 11. Any one of those three links can fail, and traffic can still flow the other way. Both of your transmitting sites stay online, radio consoles stay online. And so that is the first recommendation. Using the fiber optic is the lowest capital expenditure, because there's no capital expenses to buy anything from a telco. It's just monthly recurring expense when you're leasing a fiber optic connection.
So fiber from where to where?
It would be-
Core to 11?
it would be
11 to
from
here.
here to County 11.
Okay.
Was that included in our original estimate?
No.
No.
I go back to my original point, and it's water under the bridge. There were assumptions made that the existing connectivity that the board had between the locations was going to be acceptable to carry the radio traffic, and the short answer is, it is not. Perfect example is Friday. You lost 2 microwave shots, you would be off there. So that, before my time, so I'm gonna plead, I didn't have anything to do with that, and I'm just a bad guy. And
Well, all we can do
I've
is-
got thick skin, you can throw rocks at me, it doesn't matter, I'm just, if you start from ground zero, and that's what Neil asked me to do, he said, look, I just need you to come in and say, if you were laying this down, and we've done this, we're doing it in Marshall County right now, so there are other counties that are joining AIRS, and I built 3 radio towers in Marshall County, and we got a microwave loop that's gonna connect all of those. So this is not just for you guys, this is for everybody that joins, these are the recommendations. So connecting the 3 sites, that's the first recommendation. The second best practice recommendation is, because of the way you are joining the Birmingham radio system, for your radio consoles to work, they have to be connected to, ultimately, the Birmingham core. So you've all heard about, the infamous core. For these to register with the system and for these to interact with the core equipment, there has to be a connection between this building and Birmingham core. Either, and it doesn't matter how it gets there, it can go through some of their microwave hops. The proposed, what I have heard is the proposal right now to make the first connection is, there is a microwave link that was originally dedicated for the Shelby County project through Birmingham that was not needed in the end. So there's a brand new Candium point-to-point mobile certified microwave that City of Birmingham 911 is willing to put into service between County 11 and one of their sites, Warrior, that would connect for the first hop your radio equipment, your consoles here to the core to allow them to operate. Again, best practices are that you have 2 forms of connectivity to the core, so that in the event that that microwave got whacked, went out of service, the all of the above, your radio consoles can still operate, they can still talk to the users, and they can still see the core. That's been one of our bigger
Now
challenges.
they're doing that by, if the microwave goes out, they're doing that by control stations here or fiber.
So in the so right now, there is no second connection to the
Okay.
core. So if your radio consoles lose connection to the core,
But they don't have connection to the core right now, do they?
no,
Okay.
no, they do not. But that's, I wanna make sure I say,
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
say this correctly. If your radio consoles lose connection to the core, I believe they still have the ability to talk to local control stations through your conventional gateway.
Okay.
So there's a box that's gonna be in your room called a CCG deck, a conventional gateway. So your VHF channels and your other stuff can be controlled by your new radio consoles. I'm not a specialist in that. I would verify that before we write it down on a piece of paper. The point being, Ken, is that just like we want 2 links in and out of every tower site, we want 2 links to the core. We've been working with Greg Silas and guys in Birmingham and some other folks to try to figure out how can we get there from here. And that's been one of the bigger problems, because we really can't use a fiber optic connection because we're fooling ourselves if we have a telco connection from here to 11 and then a telco connection to the core. Well, if a telco has a problem, they're gonna have a problem on all of their systems. And so you really fool yourself if you anybody else that we can get out of this building.
Can I ask a question right there?
Yeah.
Knowing a little bit about Otelco, they have two separate switching stations and two separate. I know that the County 11 tower is on the Blumpsville switch that generally went through the ARAP fiber and up through that area. So geographically, there could be a separation to where you may have a failure on the Blumpsville side and not necessarily on the Aniana City side. So, I mean, I know they go through a central home office.
But here's the issue, and I know where you're going. The issue is where Otelco touches someone else, AT&T, Southern Light, whomever, they have a single exit point that would get us to Birmingham.
So that point, that tunnel or that bottleneck is where you're,
That's
it's
what
a
I'm worried about.
potential point of failure, not necessarily infrastructure on their side. You're talking about that bottleneck exit point.
So let's just say, for example, that we say, well, we'll buy a fiber optic connection here to somewhere, one of the tower sites that's on the Birmingham network, and that'll be our second path. The problem is, Otelco doesn't directly touch any of their radio sites. So we would have to have an Otelco to someone else fiber optic connection point, whomever. Otelco only has one of those with each company, so that becomes a single point of failure as well. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have options that we are still kicking around. One of the options is that Greg Silas has, and Robert, his radio folks, are looking at a second, he's calling it a southern loop, a second entrance point into his network for not only Blount County, but potentially some other customers on his network, where he may bring connectivity to one of your sites that through a back loop would allow you to have connectivity to him, and it potentially would not cost you anything. You don't need to go into any details yet, because there are not enough details to make it real. Suffice it to say, it's in his interest and it's in some of his other customers' interest to have that second connection. One of your tower sites might be that point of connection that allows you to have your 2 points to get home, so that your radio consoles have the ability to talk.
I'd certainly be open to that.
Well, we all do, obviously. So we're actively having discussions with Greg and Robert and everyone involved to try to figure out, okay, how can we help each other to make this happen? So that's where we are right now on the connectivity between your towers and the connectivity from your system back to Birmingham.
Okay, but let me make sure I get this straight in my head. 911 right now directly, or doesn't have direct connectivity, even when we get a microwave or fiber from here to County 11, we still gotta have a microwave link or something to go to the Warrior, and we still have to have a second connection from 911 dispatch, which could be
Somewhere.
fiber through somebody, and if it's fiber, it's gonna have to be through a second fiber provider.
So there is no second fiber provider option for this building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Greg and Robert and I and everybody else are trying to work on is a way to get to one of your other towers, probably Palisades, from a different direction, that he would provide a microwave hop, and then that could be, that hop would go to another county, and that other county has a connection back to him. That would be the path to your second connection.
Well, in the initial discussions, we actually talked about that microwave hop either being an Aurora tower or, a Marshall County tower or something like that. And that was one of the considering points of us being able to have redundancy when we purchased this, so.
It was just, to the best of my knowledge, it was never formalized.
Correct. It was theoretical conversations, but it was never formalized exactly how we were going to.
But that is, we do have the ability to do that, it's just,
We believe that there is the technical ability to do it, and if the Birmingham Radio Group is a willing move, it wouldn't cost you any dollars for them.
okay.
And that's a win-win on they want to do this, okay? They want you on the system. Greg is bending over backwards, and Robert and his team to do what they can to make this happen in a safe fashion. But
And
that's
I
what
would-
we're really all concerned about is,
And I would hope that it would benefit everybody and we could be, the intent was to be
Yes.
partners in this all along, to
That's
try to
correct.
expand their system
you
as
become a
well.
hot point is what happens. You become a hop.
But he's gotta
for other
protect,
people.
Greg's gotta
Right,
protect his own
absolutely.
system.
Understand that.
And it's in Greg's best
Yeah.
interest for his heirs customers to be at best practice and be happy customers and their users be comfortable with the fact that it's as resilient as you can afford and move on. However, that was our initial conversation, is that without a ring connection of some sort between your tower sites, your three sites, and without two connections of some shape, form, fashion to the core, it does not meet what we all consider to be best practice. Are there some out there without that? Sure. That link goes down, your radio console stop working? Yes. For a period of time until you get it back up.
So I'm following you so far, having just gotten involved in this in the last month. But the sheriff asked you about, was that an additional cost? Was that figured into the original estimate? And you said it wasn't. So the second connection to the Birmingham site, is that gonna be an additional cost also?
We are working, so the answer to that question is no. We believe that Birmingham 911 will provide the equipment for that second connection at no charge to you.
Come on, Jesus.
As long as we don't have any structural or loading issues at Palisades, which we believe is where that second microwave is.
Including that second connection point that Shelby County didn't use, we're not gonna have to pay for that.
Right.
We believe, and that's what we've asked,
Okay.
is that, and Greg, in discussions, there's no document, there's no agreement in place yet, but it is my understanding, I think it's Neil's understanding, and it's Greg's intent that
May have to pay for the tower climb to install it, but that's minimal.
Basically, this is an additional cost product that was not included in it. Now, the hope says that it's paid for by someone else,
Yes.
but it's not part of the original commitment or quote that we bought, because it was not addressed.
and I,
But if there's gonna be, if there are gonna be additional costs, like large sums, then that would be, I would hope, a new estimate that somebody would let us know.
oh, yeah, so we're gonna get to that in a minute. Yeah, absolutely. So, just trying to get you kind of a,
But we got a pile of those, unfortunately.
we're working there. Well, we're gonna get there. So, to answer Ken's question, because I was not involved in the original contractual negotiations, I am not a designer of overall radio systems. That was done by the thing. My understanding is that there was no dedicated, included in the price, form of connection to the core, which is one of the first flags that when I was asked to look at this, I said, okay, well, how are you getting home? And they said, well, we think Gray's gonna let us use an extra microwave he's got laying on the counter. I was like, all right, that's one. How you gonna get home second time?
Until,
So that's, not to make light of it,
Yeah.
but the short answer is, I haven't found any documentation that there was a, in the project cost, dedicated connection to the core as part of the original proposal.
Why would that not be part of our original proposal?
until the conversation we had with Motorola Engineering, where we signed in December, we had our first contact with their corporate engineering folks in January, was the first time that the need for this very specific circuit came up. Until that point, it would said all we need is internet connectivity,
So,
which we have everywhere, but
so
we don't have the exact type of connectivity that they need.
originally, way back yonder, when you were first talking to Motorola before the first setback and the second setback and so forth, we were talking about possibly being able to go online in April, this past April.
Correct.
So now with this being added in, we're already in July. How much of a delay are we gonna be in now for getting online and not having to use the system that we're in right now?
Yet to
Let
be
me,
determined.
let me take that. let me take that off his shoulder. Two answers to that question. We have started a discussion with Motorola about how quickly can we install the new physical radio consoles in that room, connect those radio consoles to your conventional resources that you have today, so your existing radios, and create a temporary connection to the core in Birmingham through an internet connection, so that we can get you off of that old Zetron gear that's physically in that room. If everything works correctly, and you agree to do that, Motorola agrees to do that, Greg agrees to do that, which we believe is all gonna happen, 3 to 4 months, you could have your new radio consoles in there, running your conventional radio channels with a temporary internet connection to Birmingham to make them work. Now, let me caveat all of that. That's no additional cost to you. That installing those radio consoles and connecting them up, that was in your initial contract, so there's no extra cost involved in that. There's a couple of parts that we have to buy to make the internet connection to the core, the temporary connection. Those are not expensive parts. A similar temporary connection in use in Chilton County right now to one of their radio sites, because they had a similar issue with connectivity. So they are actively using a temporary connection like that. The advantage to you guys for that is that, number one, it gets you off of the old Zetron gear. It gets you onto the new generation equipment. It gets your console operators and your dispatchers trained on the new equipment. You get to debug it, work all the buttons out. What you can't do is you can't take a 700, 800 radio and use it on that temporary internet connection to the core.
Right.
Greg's not, I don't think Greg will let you do that, and I would not recommend that you do that. But for lighting up these conventionals, because the downside risk is minimal. If that temporary internet connection drops, you've still got control stations, and they just reach over there and pick the microphone and talk to your VHF, just like if that radio console died today.
The advantage of putting these new consoles in, to me, is also, it gets part of the installation that's gonna come done ahead.
And
No use waiting until all the others done before you do that. It's
And let's be honest,
expedient.
there's a bit of PR, good news, that you could disseminate, that there's actually stuff in the county installed, working, as part of the installation process of it. That's reality. To get to site connectivity, core connectivity, radios programmed, RF equipment up, system tested, ready for you to take ownership of and start working, we're probably this time next year.
So let me ask this question. Once you have those new consoles installed and we have this first phase done, and we have the temporary internet connection to the core, I understand that we still have the patches that would be in place in order to work our analog or legacy to the new console in here. But having that ability and having that connectivity to the core to the internet, anyone that has P25 coverage, let's say the west side, that has coverage through Warrior, Palmerdale, southern part of the county, can they be on the system and be patched in? I mean, to try to,
Technically, yes, but the answer is no. And the reality is, remember what I said about downside scenario. If we put the consoles in and that temporary link fails, they reach over and pick up a backup VHF radio and mash the button to the top. Nothing changes. If you've allowed 700 users to start using those consoles and that temporary link goes down, those 700 users
on an island.
they cannot talk to you.
But they're-
Unless they have the analog. Right,
But they would be talking through the
as a
patch.
backup.
Right, and so our recommendation, and I think Motorola's is gonna be the same thing, is that nobody's comfortable with an end user with a 700 radio on their hip talking to this building through a temporary internet connection, period, in the discussion.
Correct, but the patch.
What we're
would
using
work
now doesn't
regardless.
work either, so, from over there, so we're gonna be in the same boat.
Like I said, I understand,
Yeah,
but coming out with a phased approach, you know, Ken nodded, I agree with Ken, I agree with Chief, I agree with everybody's statement, is that this is an incremental step that we can move this project forward, get things done and installed, order in phases, so that we're not waiting on one part to show up that's got a room full of gear sitting there. It makes a whole lot of sense to start the process moving forward.
Well, I wanna see it done right.
That-
I wanna
that
see
makes
it done
sense.
quickly, but I wanna see it done right. The difference in Ken and some of the other board members, no offense or anything, but, there's some of us that are actually out in the field working and using what we're currently having to use,
Fully understood.
and it's not working. We've been involved in a lot of emergency stuff that are life and death, and
And like
we
said,
can't talk back and forth. We have to pick up a telephone.
And like we said, we've put over $200,000 into this system last year, and it's gotten worse.
And
Worse.
not knocking into that, cause I supported that, but we shot from the hip on a lot of stuff instead, for instance, with you. We should've had you to begin with. We kind of, and that's history, we can't change it.
We are where we are.
That's right. Now, then my question is though, what good is this patch really gonna do? That we're
So-
talking about? What's that gonna really benefit us?
So let's not refer to it as a patch. What I have proposed. and we
Temporary internet
proposed
connection.
No, it's totally different.
Is,
It's two different things.
now,
You're talking about the VHF.
Yeah, I'm talking about the VHF
Oh,
patch.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
So, all I'm looking at is, I was asked, we're worried about these radio consoles, these Z-Tron radio consoles just rolling over and puking at any given moment. Is there a way that we can get the new Motorola consoles in place
Yeah.
early to at least control your local radio equipment? And the answer is yes, we can. It's not gonna cost you but a couple bucks for a couple little boxes, because they still have to touch the core to actually turn on. But we're not transmitting any information across that internet connection except what you're seeing on there, because the radios are local, the box is local.
So basically, all you're transmitting back to Birmingham is date and
It's
time and
logging.
connectivity.
Yeah, I'm a console.
You're logging
It's a
it.
heartbeat.
And
Okay.
I'm logged into the system,
Everything else
but I'm
going
touching a
on.
radio that's sitting.
But we
this
bought
way.
time. We bought time
And
because
we
we
bought
got a
time.
product in there,
And we,
part of the new system.
and it's something that we can get installed and going, work the bugs out, and then we've got new equipment, and it gets us down the road towards making this project go. So, so technically, we can do that. That's really not a dollar issue relation to you, because that was included in the process.
All right, so is, short of the singular microwave hop from the Birmingham core to Warrior to County 11, to complete that ring back to this center, is there another option? I mean, obviously, we don't have a fiber.
No, I mean, the second connection to the Birmingham core is gonna be at the grace of Birmingham Radio, putting a microwave, from probably Palisades going east, or turn around,
We can go,
whichever way.
we can go from Palisades to two side options.
Either
And then-
Aurora or the Palmadale?
The caveat to that is Palisades has apparently become a lightning magnet.
We're gonna talk about that.
So-
Don't worry about that. So-
We're getting to that in a minute, but
Right, but the second connection that you talked about, just like the first connection, we are really asking Greg to do his thing, because he's got, you know, the biggest budget out
Okay.
there. And it benefits him to have your tower site to make that hot. So once Palisades is connected to, let's say, Aurora.
Okay.
Aurora and that core has already, I mean, that user has already got a connection back, one connection back to Greg. This would create a second one, not only for those people, but for you.
Okay.
And if he's willing to spot that, and we can make it so, you're to the good, two microwave pops.
Okay,
So that's kind of where we are on that.
all right.
Now, to get there, this is where we start spending money too, or whatever, I'm sorry. To bring this building up to Motorola R56 standards and to do, some electrical suppression work. Like I said, we had one company come in and quote all of the R56 work. I've made some ballpark estimates on what I think it's gonna cost. So for this building, and I'm just gonna speak in general numbers, because this is a hand grenade right now, probably 20 grand worth of work in this building. fence put up outside around the tower, it's not grounded. Tower's not grounded to current R56 standards. There's nuts and bolts and things and stuff in the dispatch room that aren't, may have been when it got put in, it's not now. You know, standards change over time, it's just like you sell a house, and your local inspector goes, oh, you gotta upgrade your electrical map and you remodel it. Well, guess what? We're remodeling. So we're having to get to there. I would like to see the 3 main service panels in your dispatch, meaning your server room that provide UPS power to all your stuff, have individual surge suppression units installed on them. So, again, this is best practices, Christmas wish list, here it goes. So, there's 20 grand-ish worth of work in this building.
Okay.
Palisades. Palisades was built in,
Oh, one?
I don't know, well, it'd be,
okay, well, I wasn't looking at you as a builder, just as a board.
yeah, no, I.
2001, okay. When I went and did an inspection on that, short of, apparently there was a project a year or so ago to take a lot of unused equipment off of the tower, to take loading off of it. There really hadn't been any maintenance on that site since it was built, it doesn't look like. Okay, so, at that site, you've got, a generator that I understand is spotty.
It
The-
works, it's old, but it works.
The electrical system is inadequate and unacceptable for R56 standards, period, in the building. The tower, grounding, bonding, everything needs a complete redo. At that tower site, there is no primary UPS at Palisades. So right now, there are a couple of small little ones on each rack where we think of, when we design a Motorola tower site, we have a single UPS that powers everything with a maintenance bypass. In case it dies, you flip the button and you still keep the power running and everything. That does not exist at that facility. And there are no, so there's no UPS, there's no UPS service panel, there's no surge protection devices. The internal wiring is spotty at best, and the grounding's atrocious. Now, that's not to say that when it was put in, it wasn't at that time correct. It's just not correct now. Assuming that we put in the R56 work, a new generator, probably outside instead of in the original was the inside. So there'd be some slab work, put that on the outside. To put a maintenance, or a manual transfer switch and a generator connector panel, so that if you lost that generator, there's a box on the outside of the building, you pull one up, you plug it in. New electric panels, surge protection, all that, you're probably looking at $100 grand-ish, that's all.
You have UPS in that list.
So this is Christmas, okay? So I'm just telling you, if somebody came to me and said, Lee, write an RFP to make that up to date, done, it's gonna cost you $100,000 so to do that,
Just that Palisades.
just that faucet. And 60 of that is the generator and all the related equipment. But this is where you have to start thinking long-term as a board. If Palisades is the interconnection point for your backup connection to the core and one of your 2 transmitter sites, and you have a generator that dies, and there's no way to take one from EMA, a 30 kW light generator on a trailer, and pull it up there and plug it in real quick, have you accomplished anything for the resiliency of your system? And the answer is no. So, my job is to come in and try to help you think through and ask all the questions that maybe didn't get asked in the early part. So like I said, that's my job. So that's Palisades. The tower, my understanding is that included in the original engineering cost that y'all signed up for, Motorola would do the structural analysis on the towers as part of their engineering package to determine that whatever they're gonna add as far as RF gear, which is 2 antennas, that it's nothing. The microwave dish is the biggest load that you're gonna load on there. To do the structural analysis on that tower to make sure that it's capable of carrying that load. I think by pictures that I've seen, I think you took more load off of that tower by a long shot than you're gonna put back on it.
and we still got some brackets on it, don't we, or we take some,
My understanding is there's still some.
there's still some brackets that needs to come off.
But when we get into that point of we start going up and down the
Yeah.
tower, we do it
Yeah.
efficiently so that
Yeah.
we go up and down as few times as
Yeah.
possible.
Now, does this, that's the Motorola side, they're talking about their microwave, that didn't include the possible microwave that we might add, right? Or that includes the new system,
When we do the structural analysis, it will include potential link back to Aurora.
Okay,
That's
okay.
correct. Yep. So that's Palisades. County 11. So County 11, the short answer is we have to do everything at County 11 that we do at Palisades. Because County 11 has a tower and a big giant concrete box. And that's it. The electrical service is rigged right now to provide power to the JTM equipment. There's no grounding in the building. It was originally some funky three-phase service. They've rigged it over the years. My recommendation on that site is to treat it like a new build. Call the power company, get them to set you a new meter on the far side of the building. Leave anything that's in that building, leave it alone, don't touch it. Build your own little room for your shelter on the inside. It lines up with that waveguide window in the back far corner, away from everybody else's junk. And build you a little shelter room in that corner. Put you a couple of air conditioners in it, and a new electrical panel, new UPS, just like everything else. And so you're just using up a 12 by 20 spot in the corner of that big concrete box. The tower needs to be rung down, so somebody needs to do, as part of the first climb, they need to do a shakedown on it, tighten bolts, check all the things. That tower is built like a freight train. You can land a helicopter on top of it. Okay, it's an old AT&T long lines type tower. So structurally, the tower could hold tons of stuff.
Structural thing there is not the problem, I think it's the noise, it's the dissimilar metals and joint arrested and grounding.
Yeah, and so that's why I said that it's basically like a new build. So at that site, between the grounding and the R56 work, installing a generator, the automatic transfer switch, generator connector panel, putting a UPS in there, just like the other sites, adding new electrical panels, building the little room itself, and adding air conditioners. If you're at 115-ish, and those are hand-running numbers at that site. But that site is what makes this project work. Without County 11, none of this works. And that's why it's so important for the board, and I commend you for taking the move to acquire that facility and the others. This just didn't work without it. So I think you got a deal personally. So that is what that is. So for putting the three sites at the level at which we need them to be, at best practices, with new equipment, you're looking at $250,000. Now, the first question I always get asked is, well, can we do it for less? Sure. It's a risk analysis. What do I do? Because anything that you do from that point, there's risk, period. But anything that you take out of there from a protection standpoint, or being able to wheel up a generator and plug it in standpoint, or any of that stuff, it's all trade-off.
The old adage, you get what you pay for.
And if we're investing, I say we, because I think I've been, once been one of my clients for a long time. If we are moving forward and taking this step, and y'all all know Johnny Hart, that's Mark County. Money out of him is like beating blood out of a turnip, okay? But I had to convince him of the same thing. If you were making a 20-year investment and joining this radio system, which is basically what you're doing, I know it's short term, but you're making a long-term investment. And you're getting out of the platform where you two guys can't talk to each other. You can see each other, throw a rock, probably hit each other, but can't talk to each other on the radio. This is the cost of doing business. This is the path that y'all chose, is to join heirs and to move forward on that system. And there are lots of advantages to doing that. It's an expensive platform, and you get to pay for it. So Lee's advice as an independent consultant looking at a project that's already been designed and set up, these are the things I would recommend that you consider enhancing what you have day one to get started. So I'll pause for a second. think about that. The other thing to think about is, whatever you decide to do as a board, to bring these sites up to standard. For spending money, this is a public works project. So by definition, in Alabama, we have two purchasing laws. We can buy something, if it's $15,000 or less, we don't have to bid it. But if it touches a building, or it's a maintenance or improvement of a physical structure, that falls under the public works law. So that's like you change the roof on this building, that would be a public works project. Those rules are a little bit different. The threshold for advertising and taking sealed bids on public works projects is $50,000, not 15. We have the opportunity to look at how you as a board want to structure this, to determine if you want to have one public works project and bid the whole thing out, or if you want to have one project per site. That is entirely up to the board. Could you do all the work that needs to be done at this site, call it a public works project, fall underneath $50,000, meet the auditor requirements, and just pull the trigger and do it tomorrow? Yes. Could you do it at either one of the other sites? No. Not unless you don't put a generator at Camp 11, you can't not do. Or you decide to leave the old generator at Palisades, maybe. That's the question that y'all can think about, because if that generator pukes and powers out, somebody's got to have an electrician that's willing to hot wire a panel with a portable generator. Or, another option is, we declare it one public works project to get the most bang for the buck. We advertise all of the work at all three sites, take bids, because you can get some economy of scale, because you're having somebody do all three sites. You probably would get better numbers on the top side.
And
Do it
you're
that
dealing
way.
with one contractor, and it's a complete package.
That's
We have
correct.
one person held responsible for all the grounding and all of that at one,
And
at all
it
three
would be-
sites.
The least questions is, did you or did you not attempt to structure this so that you bypass part of the bid law?
Right.
I have to say that for permanent recording. It is part of the master P25 with grade project. I think you could designate individual sites as individual projects, because they could be done at different times. I think from a dollar standpoint, the board's gonna get the best bang for the buck. You declare it one public works project, we put all the statements of work together, you have one general contractor that's responsible for that, and move on.
A question on if we contract that out like that, who or what is going to be the inspection criteria for total acceptance to make sure it complies with all of these standards you're talking about?
Excellent question. If you continue to retain my services, it'd be called invitation to bid, it changes, it's not an RFP, it's an ITB. In that document, there are the acceptance standards that have to be met, the payment schedule, all of that is in writing in the contract. Part of what I do for clients, Marsh County, for example, we spent $1.5 million just on radio towers. My job was to advertise those, manage the construction, completion of those, do the inspection, make sure that they were compliant with R56, and that they met their standards, and then say, yes, Johnny, you have to write a check for it. That's what I do.
You climb the towers?
No, sir. I get that, this far off the ground. But, what we do is we have, actually, very good question. Part of our inspection process is we have to have photographs from the tower crews with the tape to the top. We have to have photographs of all of the ground bars that go in. So we document everything that's done during that process, so that there's records, and if it comes back in years and something wasn't done right, we go back and say, well, there's the picture, you know. And so, you either did or you didn't do it right. So, there are, and the bid law, just to remind everybody, for a public works bid, you do have to have a licensed general contractor in the state of Alabama for a public works project. That general contractor can be a paper contractor, okay? As long as they're a licensed general contractor, they hold proper sub-licensing, power lines and things like that, they may or may not perform the work. So there are companies in the state of Alabama that have their own crews and perform their own work. There are companies, so I've used at least 4 different companies to build, refurbish, and install new towers and shelters and things like that. But I can tell you, you get multiple bids. One of them's based in Alabama, one of them's based in Tennessee, one of them's based in Kentucky.
So they're gonna vary. One question I have, I know for municipal projects that we do, we are part of a co-op, so we have the ability to purchase equipment like the generators and those kind of services through the co-op at a discounted rate. If we bid this project as a bid in whole, we don't get that opportunity to purchase the generators and those kind of things at a discounted rate where, and it's gonna,
Not necessarily. So there's good and bad. So the short answer is, you can provide anything you want for the general contractor.
okay,
However, because it's part of a larger public works project, you're gonna get questioned by the auditors as to, why did you not include that in the overall public works bid? Now, if your answer is, I'm part of the NJPA or HGAC, National Purchasing Cooperative, and those are approved on your website, and they're gonna say, yeah, but that's for individual piece part purchases, not part of a, we've been through this.
Well, doesn't that also,
And it also adds liability that if you hand a generator in a crate to the contractor and he puts it in and it won't start, it ain't on him, it's on us.
all right.
and that's what you're talking about, well, you're looking at one vendor, and you're changing that by trying to
Well,
piecemeal the
I'm
parts.
also trying to bring down, I'm also trying to bring down the cost.
Well, I understand that, but
You want one person, well, the way we bring down the cost is through competition.
Okay.
So, like I said, I know for a fact, I have at least 3 tower companies, general contracting groups that will bid on this. That do work regularly in the state of Alabama. And I can tell, I can show you towers that all 3 of them have built. Even in Marshall County, on those 3 towers, one company built 2 and another company built 1.
So you think the $250,000 is what we're looking at for this project?
And hand grenade numbers to sit down and give you a round estimate, I think the short answer is yes.
Now, I have to ask this because I've got myself in this situation. Is that based on previous jobs in the last 12 months, or are we talking post-COVID numbers? Oh my goodness. Because, I mean, conceivably, this $250,000 could be $400,000.
So the
Which
short
we
answer,
can't do.
the short answer is these are numbers that I would expect to see in the next 3 months.
Okay.
For perfect example, I think I put $60,000 in for the generator and all the switching and installation. So typically we put a 40 kW generator at tower site. That's a $25,000 generator from 2 or 3 different companies, okay? That includes the generator, the automatic transfer switch, the manual transfer switch, and you double that number for installation. So I've gone above that. I put, 60,000 in my estimate, just because things are weird, and I will go ahead and tell you this. If you told me today, if you told Neil, and Neil told me, write the bid, put it out on the street, because you always have to remember, you get bids back, if it's some ridiculous number, you just say no. You're not under obligation to purchase it, we just push the pause button and go for something else. But the only way we know is when we put a bid out on the street and get the numbers back. However, due to lead times of UPSs, generators, and stuff right now, it's July the 15th. If we pull the trigger, it would be the end of this calendar year before we're done.
At least.
Minimum.
Before we're done with everything, tower sites and in here.
And these
But does that put us, at that point, does that put us talking on P-25?
no,
no, that,
But think about this.
put you closer,
Sheriff,
but don't put you there.
So there's a step 1 and step 2. So step 1 is you have to get your tower sites ready for Motorola to start hanging equipment on.
And the longer we wait on that, the further that can gets kicked down the road.
Now Motorola's told me, they said, once you pull the trigger, tell us to go, and you tell us January 1, you're gonna have your sites ready for us. They said it's probably 3 or 4 months for us to get all our ducks in a row, get it installed, get it tested, get ready to actually say you're live. So, in round numbers, it could be March, April instead of June, July.
And
But that's dependent upon how quickly we bring these sites up to the standard that it needs to be. So Motorola's told me, they said, hey, look, we can order stuff and get it in X number, weeks, months, whatever. They're not gonna be the holdup on this. We're the holdup on this.
I certainly don't. I mean, I know you presented the Christmas list, and I want it to be done the best way that it possibly can to provide the most protection. But at this point, I think in our financial stand, we may need to do it the most economical way that we possibly can too.
All right, so here's the rub, let me ask you.
So that's kind of where,
I'm very aware, this may be painful.
okay, all right.
So, this is the way I look at it. Let's say we go to bid and we ask for this, and it comes back and it's $300,000, pick a number. The hard question that the board's gotta ask itself is, if $300,000 is too much, how much are you willing or can you invest to bring your system up to a standard that you're comfortable with? Because if you go back and say, there's just no way we can do $300,000, but I could do 175. Go back to the drawing board and we'll start whacking away at stuff, and we can come back with a proposal that says, okay, I think this is $175,000 worth of work. My point is, I don't know your financial position. The only thing that I know is there was a discussion at the last board meeting about the potential for, while rates are low, a refinance on this facility.
And that was my
And
next
to
question.
utilize some of the potential equity there to do these system improvements. That's, that's not, I can't tell you you need to refi your building and use the equity. That's a decision that the board needs to make. However, I will say this, it comes down to, if you came to me and you said, Lee, I got $100,000 saved up in the bank, and that's all I can put in this, you're not gonna make it. So the question is, if it's 100 or 200 or 300, and I don't need to be flippant with dollars, because I understand they're real dollars, but in the long run, it just doesn't make that much difference.
Lee, don't we
If you're
need,
going back and you can, I don't know what your building's financed at right now, but you can do, so commercial paper, bank rates, I'm doing this with Watauga County, we're building a new facility for them. There's 30-year money out there for 2.5%. You probably don't want to stretch your billing out, I don't know where you are in the payment cycle. I think I've understood that you've done some early prepayment, which is great, as long as you have cash flow to do that. But now you are presented with a financial question. You were being good stewards of money by paying off things early and not paying any more interest than you had to. You now have to look at those options and say, my cash flow, how I support myself to make payroll and everything else, to include my payments for this system on a yearly basis, now take precedent over me paying my building off early if you ask for me more. I don't get to make that decision.
This radio system is more important.
Well, and so
And that's
that
because,
is my
like Chief said,
position.
knowing what we deal with outside this
Right.
building.
So we all know in 911 in Alabama, we move on fixed income. Okay? There's gonna be additional income, once the system is up and rolling, there are user fees, I think, that are built into that to help you with your yearly payment cycle on that. I think there's a year-end payment that's due, that you have set-asides for that. So anything that we spend, I understand, is on top of all of that. I get it. However, I just would caution you to don't think small at this point in the game. So if you have the opportunity to talk to your local financing institution, whoever did the building, I can hook you up with those folks if you want to get options on that. Talk to them right now, because the market's still okay, about your options there. And you may want to create a reserve fund that's in excess of that number while you can. It's just like a house. Once you pay your house off and you're living in it, man, you're never getting equity out of that until you sell it. You can't, I mean, you can do a partial, you still have money on it, and you can do a home equity loan. And think about, that's kind of what we're doing. you're doing a home equity loan on a building, if you choose to utilize the equity that you built up or not.
So I think.
Well, I think that's what we were already
Yeah.
talking about doing, was having a reserve, not that big of a reserve, but
Yeah, and I think that's kind of bringing us to the next point in the discussion that I think you
I have a question
contacted
before we
on.
go to the next point.
I need to finish
Okay.
one more point of discussion before we move on to that.
All right.
So the last thing that I saw, and we touched on it early, in the original contracted design, there's one microwave link included in that proposal. And that was gonna go from Palisades to County 11. You need two. All right, you need one from here to Palisades in addition, because the one that was here is one of those products that didn't qualify, and I think it's actually dead. That's what I'm gonna go.
It's dead again.
So, you have a couple options in that. Again, this is me coming in and armchair quarterbacking, because I wasn't in on the first part, so it's easy for me to say this. We've had discussions with Motorola, we've had discussions with MCA, we've had discussions with Chris Young and Yogi and everybody else to say, okay, you included in the proposal a brand of microwave that Motorola is now wanting to sell that is different than every other microwave used in the state of Alabama in the AIRS P25 system. Because it has nothing to do with the quality of the previous microwave, it's that their sales team likes this other company better and they're really pushing it. And this is where project managers from Motorola don't particularly care for me saying these things. It's a fine microwave. It's a Nokia microwave. It's carrier grade, just like the Cambium, which is in use in every other microwave shop in the Birmingham AIRS platform. It's twice as expensive. You can almost get,
Somebody's getting kicked back.
you can almost get two Cambium shots for what I think you are probably being charged for that one shot. We have brought this up in discussions, and Motorola is being very defensive and very adamant about not changing that microwave.
Not changing it from Nokia to Cadmium. Now, we have Cadmium, we have a complete spare system that we didn't utilize because it was at Allcom and everybody forgot about it. We had a complete system to put back up.
Right.
Now, can this not be used? And you said that ours is down with that rickety one we had. Is that what you're talking about, replacing that with?
I think so.
And would that not do in place of buying a link from here to there?
I don't know the answer to that because I don't know what the gear is and what,
It's a Cadmium, just like, but are we not using, what happened to the link, to the Cadmium link going to the West Tower on the motor turbo for the Blount County Transportation?
That's what this spare that's in the closet is.
Yeah.
When it got struck back in the spring, and this one.
Oh, yeah, I know
was
about that
forgotten,
completely.
we already had the other ordered. So, the other one went up, the spare came off the shelf at Allcom up to here, so we knew where it was. So we've got another spare on the shelf, it's just a matter of where do we go with that spare now? But part of this discussion is, of the grounding and stuff that we need to do at Palisades, is do we wanna even put anything back up until we get the grounding work done? Because if this one only lasted 3 months, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by putting another one up there?
After that, that's been a long time since that happened. There's gotta be some changes made up there to attract it, but again, that's different. I have a question before I forget. We do need to do the grounding before we talk about doing consoles in here. This building needs the grounding done before we install the consoles.
I'm not,
Don't you think?
I am not as worried about that, Ken,
Okay.
because, here's why, because there's no physical connection of the consoles to anything outside.
Okay.
It's all
Okay.
network based, so there's no coax
Yeah.
that's gonna.
I would hate to see us put new consoles in there and during the process, all of a sudden,
Motorola, we've had that discussion,
Yeah.
and we said, hey, will you come put those in as long as we have committed to bring the site up to standard? The answer was yes.
okay.
Okay, now, would I hang anything on the tower? No, until you get some things fixed. But would I worry about, an MCC 7500 or anything in the server room blowing up or having a light? The only thing I would worry about would be a surge. So we could could stage, let's just say we go to bid on this, we could stage the work that, so that we do the electrical and grounding work here first, and then move to the other sites, which makes sense.
Here in
And we just
Palisades,
stage
yeah.
it that way, we just say, okay, this, you know, step one is you do the electrical and the grounding work here, and then step two, we go to Palisades.
Well-
Get that one back up and running. The last one will be 11, because it's not 11.
Well, one thing you mentioned a while ago too is pictures, pictures, pictures.
Yeah, well,
Totally agree with that. And that's the reason, way back yonder, I said, we don't need nobody climbing this tower that's not certified and everything. We need to make sure anybody that climbs and does any work, some of these people that's just local people, we get to climb and hang something, they needs to be pictures of all the ground and everything that's done there. This is what, you know, we go the cheapo route sometimes, we're paying for it. That's just my opinion.
yeah, well, so the good news about, so if you go out and we do a bid, we hire a general contractor to come in and do all this work, all of that's in the document, all those requirements for documentation are there, all of the licensing for, they have to have certified climb, there's an insurance requirement, and my standard document is what we use at all the sites, it's there to protect you guys. So if anybody comes back and says, well, you didn't tell them to do a line sweep test and they hung, you know, coax, and like, no, here it is, there's the test right there, and it passed when they hung it, so they did their job. Something happened after the fact. Protects them and it protects us. Anybody that's worth their salt is used to doing this. Like I said, I do lots of towers all over the country, actually. And so, and I work with lots of tower companies. This is not a big job. But the good news is, if you put all three of them together, it's big enough that you'll attract folks to come and do it. That, Lou's opinion. So, back to the microwave thing, what I have asked Neil, and Neil, through my mouth, is gonna ask you to give us permission as an official request to enter into discussions with Motorola and MCA on the possibility of a second microwave link, whether that's a second Nokia or trading a Nokia for Cambium based on pricing model, and then bring that option back to you. That can run as a parallel track to everything else we've talked about. Motorola has asked for us to have some official request from the board to proceed with that instead of me running them up and down the flagpole, basically. So I would ask that the board,
Can we include the question to use our existing
absolutely,
stuff
we'll look at
to
that.
replace this?
We'll look at
Because
that.
we've got that, it's paid for.
Absolutely.
We paid, I forget, $1,500, $2,000 to have it repaired and stored down there at Alcon.
Listen, we pull the serial numbers off, they can pull it up and see.
They know, they got all the
and see
records,
what
yeah.
it is, and if it's a viable alternative, then the short answer is absolutely.
So your request is to authorize our Neil and our consultants negotiations with Motorola concerning
A
a
second microwave.
second microwave link.
Just leave it broad like that. That way, they have something to hang their hat on.
Because they are gonna apply a charge back to our project for a change order to redo that engineering, is basically what they said.
Let's just be candid, guys, this is not a role, okay? If you ask, so they have a project, and they have a design, and if we ask them to change that design, it's going to take engineering time on their part to change it, and so that's a legit charge.
But
Now,
what's,
our job is to make sure that it's a reasonable charge, but I would not ask any vendor to go back and change the design of a system they've proposed without expecting them to come back to us and say, all right, if we are to do this, we anticipate it'll take this many engineering hours, so you should be prepared for a $10,000 engineering charge to redesign the microwave link. In a $2.4 million system, that's peanuts.
what I like though,
I
you
don't
said
know
most of
what
us using the
number it is.
cadmium system.
There's gonna be some.
And that's what I like, the
legitimate-
fact of sticking to the cadmium.
I do too, Ken.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my philosophy on that was that if you talk to the core owner, so Greg Silas and I have had these discussions. We have a meeting next week, and we're all going to Pratt, we'll talk more about details of these discussions. He said, Lee, every single microwave link I have is canceled.
See that,
So there's nothing wrong
And
with
in
what you're-
everybody's,
It's a sales change philosophy at
Yeah.
Motorola that they've partnered with Nokia now. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with back in and rethink and change this, that there would be an additional engineering charge. It's unreasonable to think they would do it for nothing.
And in all the other system owners, like we are, packages that they buy, there is a spares set. And if everybody's spares are the same,
Just the building
If-
payment on all of this.
I lose two, I can borrow one from you because yours is the same as mine kind of
I
thing.
can't find it.
And I have to wait on the 8 or 10 week turnaround time, and then when mine comes in, I give it back, that kind of thing.
So
I've
with
already-
this, with this,
To that, I've already made myself a pest and a nuisance, because I've already got one call from Motorola telling me to quit, and I'm like, no, it's my job. We asked the question that Neil just said, because I had been told that there were spares built into your main product. There are, it's not a huge number, but again, Greg Silas from Birmingham is the one that had a conversation with me and said, hey, you know, you may wanna ask them how much money did they bolt in and what did they bolt in? Because I've got stuff sitting on the shelf, and it's just a function of, if Neil needs something or to get him up, I'll send my spare and they can send his to me, he said it's all one happy system, we don't care.
my,
So that's part of what we are also going back and reviewing the original contract to see.
so with this project, and that brings me to this, is that project change going to affect our contract price, or anything else that we've previously signed?
So potentially, so if we, yeah, so what we're asking permission to do is to get them to give us a price on, if we, well, then one, we're gonna ask, can we use the microwave now? If we can, then we'll ask them, okay, give me an estimate on the engineering charge to incorporate that microwave into the design. That'll be a certain number of dollars. We'll come back to y'all and say, okay, you wanna use your microwave, they have a legitimate charge of X. You have to approve that.
But it should, in theory, be inside the original amount.
If you can't use that microwave, if for some reason, whatever, then that's when we ask them, all right, we need two. We can't afford to buy another Nokia, as good as it is, and it is a good microwave. Will you give us an estimate on the engineering charge and the net dollar change to switch to two Cambium units instead of one Nokia unit? And they will come back and say, okay, it's gonna cost you, it's either gonna cost you this much money, or you're gonna save this much money. It's right there on the board.
But
Well, we're
we're,
gonna charge you this many dollars for re-engineering that. And that's legitimate. They deserve to be paid for that, because we're asking them. But my point is, we're gonna get an estimate, we're gonna quote from them. We'll come back to you
Okay.
before we commit to anything, obviously.
That
So,
6110 might be it.
So I have a motion to be presented on the floor to authorize them to go into negotiations and bring us back
So
that
moved.
estimate.
Second.
All right, motion made by Sheriff Moon, second by Chapman. Any other discussion?
one quick question. The proposal now includes one IKEA shot,
Mhm.
and we're talking about adding a second one. If we use our existing Cadmium, we're still gonna have one IKEA, right?
Mhm.
So are we gonna look at, in this quote, getting that replaced with Cadmium too? Replace IKEA with Cadmium? I mean, you know, I'm saying,
Ideally, yes.
why not have Cadmium throughout, or IKEA, don't make no difference. Better to have two of the same kind, you know. You follow me?
I agree. Here's what they're gonna say. They're gonna say, you're running me up and down the phone call. The sales guys at Motorola are gonna say, really? You know, you're making work for
Yeah.
me, because it takes so many hours to generate any piece of paper out of
Yeah.
Motorola. They're gonna say, you're running me up and down the phone.
If we
My
get to use our
suggestion is-
existing, it may not be worth the change order.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, is if the existing one meets standard and can be used, let's get the engineering charge to incorporate it into the project and call it a day.
I agree.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Uh,
Any opposed? All right, motion made.
So, Mr. Chair, let me further go. What's the board's thought, and I don't know if you wanna do it today, I would urge you to do it today, to consider the proposal to do the restoration and corrective actions at the three sites as a single package as it is.
Yeah, I was gonna,
That's the next
Yeah,
thing on
so-
the list.
I was thinking about that myself. What is our, financial situation right now? Could we afford $300,000 for these things that we want, that need to be done here in the Dozer side?
depends on what hometown will allow us to renegotiate on a refi of this building.
What is our status on that? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that was the next,
that was
the
my next question.
Yeah, next
What did
question
you find out
was
about it?
how much was, my understanding you were gonna research that and tell us as far as our equity, what
I don't-
we have available.
I don't know what number they will go up to. I asked originally 300, and they gave me a reply on that. I have not gone above and beyond 300 because all of this has come up more recently. I was trying to get back to that at the moment.
While he's looking at that, Lee, you said you have contacts that you could put us in touch with that we might look outside of just sticking to our one little bank and getting better financing. Because we was looking at 3.1, I think, for this refinancing. Wasn't that right? I think we was looking at 3.1% if we refinanced it through Hometown.
I think that's the number, but,
It was
Okay,
3 point
what-
something.
yeah, I think.
It was whatever our current rate
If
was.
we can get it
were
at
gonna
2.5 out some, I'm not that, hey, I'm for saving the money we can.
So I had a meeting with Watauga County last week and, a local bank there that has a federal program that was instituted, that they have a improvement money for counties and things, and that one qualifies for it. Their estimate to us was, it's a 30-year program, and the rate, depending on your quality of credit, varies from, 2.4 to 2.6%.
That's worth looking at. Depends on the time delay.
Especially with that kind of money, that kind
That's a lot of money.
Length of
That's a,
that.
yeah.
Well, let me ask
We're
you
already
this.
in the
It-
30 year though.
Let me just say
That's
this.
what this new for.
Well,
I will say this, if you have a local institution that you deal with and you have a relationship with, if there's a way that you can stay with them,
and find out what program they're on.
timing, well, they can't, this. is a
They can't match
federal
with the other
thing.
program.
But the reality is, right now, you can have a conversation, I can put you in touch with these other institutions, and I'm not trying to squeeze anybody, but you go back to your local bank and say,
I agree.
for the amount of interest difference over 20 or 30 years, 20 years, let's say, the full that you get because you've already paid that bill, so for whatever the number ends up being, as far as number of years, you have to look at the difference in interest. If an institution financed you, so when did you finance this building? 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
14 is when we moved into it, so.
So 6, 7,
Somewhere
7, 8
around
years
there.
ago, we were in a much higher rate environment than we are today. They're not being generous to say, oh, we'll keep your rate where it is.
So the reply that I got was if we go back up to $1 million on this building for 25 years at 3.25, she gave me what the payment would be. So if we go back up to $1 million, that is $381,463 today in equity.
But we already have a use for how
200,000
much
of
of
that
it.
is obligated as the payment to Motorola at the end of the year. So
Right.
that's only 181,000 usable.
And we're going without an appraisal for this building.
Correct.
To me, we ought to get an appraisal ASAP.
Well,
Uh,
so my suggestion.
Yes, please.
Don't disagree, but generally, the way we finance these buildings is with a revenue line, or a revenue line. So your security with the bank is on your revenue stream, not on the value of the real estate. Okay? Because you're never gonna get an appraisal that you think is
Yeah.
worth what it is, because these buildings are unique, very designed. And so, most of everyone that I've been involved with the 6 or 7 new constructions that we either did a public bond or we did with a local bank, they have been revenue-based guarantees. So your guarantee payment that you get every year for State 901 board is what the bank holds is guaranteed, not a lien on the physical building. And so if you're not in that structure now, when you go back and talk to the bank, I would suggest that you ask them, I don't know how your original financing was set up, if it was set up with the mortgage on the building, or if it was a revenue bond, but I would just say that we highly recommend a revenue bond, because then you're not subject to the 80-20 lending rule, you're not subject to appraisal and finding somebody that, I think the dollar per square foot you have in this building is a pretty hefty number when you built it.
Long time shows to be commercial real estate.
And that, just need to ask them, you know, if
That's
they would
not
consider,
revenue.
if they would consider a revenue, yeah, if they would consider a revenue bond on
What
this.
he's talking about.
That's not, they don't have us classified as revenue.
So is there a registered mortgage on this property?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then it's not a revenue bond.
And what is our balance actually now?
He's right, the revenue bond, if they'll go, that local bank,
618,537 as of right this minute.
if the local bank will do that, I mean, if they're going by what revenue you got coming in from the state, you know, they're looking at that, they're not looking at what this building is worth or what your
Where on our,
system.
financial sheet is our mortgage payment shown? What is that, 6110, or what is it? Which line item?
It is not on that, that summary sheet that you get, it's on the balance sheet.
That's a balance sheet, it's not on the expense side,
Yeah,
that's a
it's-
balance sheet account. Cause it's actually a balance sheet transfer.
Okay, so what does that do to the numbers whenever
Nothing.
we're
They
looking
don't
at
affect
plus
these
minus
numbers.
here?
That's not an expense. It's a balance sheet transfer. You're taking it out of one account, putting it in another. Taking it out of your cash account and put it into the asset account. You're just paying somebody else to give you that asset.
That sheet is operational expenses, not, what's the, it's almost like an
Operating
equity,
expenses, yeah.
it's almost like an
It's-
equity account.
Yeah, it's what it basically is. It's a balance sheet account. Just like the thing will be on the Motorola thing.
So what we need to do at this point is go back to our local bank lender,
We see that.
have two options. One, from the commercial side, but see if there's also the option of doing a revenue bond, similar to what municipalities and government have.
We need more.
I
They
mean,
could actually,
because
About
it would
300,000.
be, right,
They
it could
could
potentially.
We need to go, personally, I think we need to look at about 1.25 or 1.5 million.
1.25 is what we originally loaned on this facility.
That's what, okay,
But that was on the property,
That was on a real estate.
yeah.
yeah.
Can the same institution do the revenue bond and have the, property,
Commercial.
Commercial.
That's the only time-
can they have both, can the same institution have both,
Sure.
based on revenue and,
Absolutely,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. Yeah, most institutions want a revenue bond.
Who
They
who
don't
y'all
wanna get-
dealing with?
They don't wanna get into the
Bruce.
finding friendly
Bruce.
appraiser
Bruce?
stuff, so. That's why we do revenue bonds for the governmental
Right.
agencies, is we don't get into putting a mortgage on.
What's his last name?
right. Bruce Ladden.
Another thing we don't know about is what's gonna happen with this so-called infrastructure legislation that may or may not happen. As far
It's
as,
not gonna happen in a time frame that's gonna help us.
And at this point in time,
Unfortunately, that's
there's,
the, now, there is a bucket of money being passed out right now.
We're not, what I.
at this point in time, I don't think we're privy to it though.
Okay.
Like I said, I didn't know, but I know that there are counties.
When you say not privy to it, we're not being allowed to be privy to it, or,
911 is still not considered public safety.
If, the only way that the Blount County 911 district would be to absorb, would be for it to come through
It's gotta come,
it's gotta come through someone, another organization into us. We
municipalities
can't-
of the county would have to gift that to us.
Right.
So we're not
Okay,
directly.
that's
Give
privy
you
my-
an example.
Yeah,
I-
a
I-
municipality or the county commission would have to gift it to
Where
us.
we
We
stand
can't,
on municipality commission,
we don't know yet. We're,
Right. We do have grants, so Sumter County got an EDECA grant.
Yeah.
For $250,000. And the way those work is they go to all the municipalities in the county, if they all agree to spend it on a project, and I'm sorry, Wilcox County. Wilcox elected all their municipalities said, yep, we'll use that to renovate the old National Guard armory, we're gonna make that a dispatch center. So, yeah, you have access to things somewhat indirectly.
we're not
But I just
getting,
didn't know if the current stimulus package that the county, so counties and cities are getting dollars right now.
Right.
If those dollars are qualified for, if the county commission wanted to put money into this. 'cause
they could if they wanted to,
They
there you
could.
go.
They could.
they
I
could,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
That part of it qualifies. Now, whether that is a priority of
There are at least 2 counties that are. We are not one of them, so far,
That are what?
that are giving money to their 911 boards for
Okay.
radio purposes.
Has it been requested?
Oh, yeah.
We are on the list as a possibility, but we are not at the top of the
Right,
list, I
yeah.
don't believe.
They've asked everybody to contact the commissioners, and of course, I think Adam supports it anyway.
He does.
So, I know Shelby County approved last week to do 7 million towards theirs, and DeKalb County is doing 3.5 towards theirs. So those are the 2 that I know have,
There's no reason Blunt County shouldn't come out and support the people of Blunt County by having the communications and the safety.
Well, I do know
Law
that there,
enforcement.
now, on the 22nd, there will be a work session at the county commission to discuss what the ruling is on the availability of spending that money, so that's what we're waiting to see.
Just kind of circle back,
Okay.
these are all good discussions, I think, for everybody, but to go back to the original question. Does the board wish to go ahead and proceed in creating the bid to do the work and get it ready for bids? Because it would take me a couple, 3 weeks to get papers and nuts and bolts and things together to get a release ready. So if it takes a couple of weeks to get the document ready, we have to advertise it for 3 weeks in a local paper, because it's gonna be less than $500,000, we don't have to go statewide. So that's 6 weeks plus, so you're looking at a couple of months, at least 2 months worth of process to get a number. So at the end of 2 months, the board's got between now and then to have discussions with our local institution to have funds available.
I make a motion that we allow Lee, or ask Lee to provide the documents needed to bid this stuff, the bid needed to bid this out, and have them ready for us to save time.
Second.
One project.
Yeah, one project, yes.
One project.
do we need to designate that somehow through a motion and a vote as
Is
a,
it a public works project?
We just need, I think we need Ken's motion that,
That we make it a public works project, that Lee,
we feel that it meets the requirements that I've done for public works project, all 3 sites will be included. We will create an ITB invitation to bid, take bids, and then present those bids to the board for your either accept or reject.
Does that motion include item 1 in the new business?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I still second it.
question, you said, are we talking about going ahead and putting it out to bid, or just getting the
No,
paperwork ready
that
for
was
bid?
the RFI, or
So the invitation to bid.
the invitation to bid, and then
I'll
present.
create the document.
Okay.
My suggestion is for point of speed, is that you authorize your director to review the document and release, because if we have to come back in a month to get your approval, then I have to advertise it for 3 weeks, we just put ourselves further down the road.
My concern is
There's
the
no
money to do it
out to
with.
y'all. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to put a bid out.
Okay, so if we
have
don't,
to accept it.
And
if
you
we
have
don't
to
come up with the
accept
And
money
you don't have
before
to have,
then,
you don't have to have money in your pocket. Right?
okay, that's my
And
concern.
then once we get the bid back in, and we're still, if we haven't secured the funds, we can reject all bids.
That
We
was
don't
my
have- yeah.
concern.
If we come up looking and the bid comes lower than we thought, we don't have to loan as much.
Without the bid, we don't know how much money we need.
Right, exactly.
Everybody's got on the same page now.
Did you get a vote on it?
I hadn't yet, I was just making sure we weren't gonna add anything to the motion, we've already added 3 things.
If
All right,
Alex
so
was
we
here, he'd
have
be
a
shaking
motion
his
to
head.
allow,
Would be all with-
so we have, on the floor, we have a motion to allow, our consultant to do the bid. We have a motion to, allow Neil to review it. I'm assuming that Neil's gonna send out a group email, with all of us. We would all reply within that email, which would authorize, in a sense, him to do that. And then what was the third thing? There was one more thing in that.
We'll authorize him to do the bid.
Yeah.
So it was gonna be
The bid meets approval.
One,
Okay.
one
All right.
bid, one
All right.
single bid.
So the motion on the floor by Mr. Campbell, second by, Chief Chapman. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right.
Neil, when y'all do the consoles in there, you're doing, you're kinda like a patch, whatever you call it, to y'all's old system. If that goes down to Birmingham, do we go back on what we're doing now?
change the way yours is set up.
Okay,
Until we
Currently.
go live, right?
that works. I just figured.
This is just to get us off the 20-year-old.
That's right, when they do go live, you no longer have to do the up and back, you just go straight to the core and do your thing.
Currently, we're just talking on a RF radio to you from
Yeah,
here.
that's what I thought. Nothing's gonna change when y'all put the console in.
Correct.
All right, so at this point, we've covered all of old business and new business line one, correct? That's-
Yes,
That's where we need to
got
be.
1, 2, and 3, and number 1 under new business, all in one
All right.
long
So
conversation.
that brings us to item number 2.
Can I make a statement reference item number 2? Since we're talking about the consoles and everything, can we table this, or maybe we'll find out for sure about that? Because to me, we don't wanna put any carpet or anything in there, the new consoles is in and all that work done, I think. So
I'm
can we,
certainly in agreement.
That was gonna be my suggestion also,
Yeah.
is that we wait and see, because the new equipment is going to sound and operate differently than the existing equipment.
but it's not gonna change the acoustics.
It's not gonna
So-
change the acoustics, but it is gonna change the level of background noise to some extent.
It's not noise canceling capability better in this system, don't
The what?
it? Or does it?
The input gain will be able to be set up differently than the current system. I think a lot of what Mr. Campbell's hearing on the radio is because to make the input gain high enough for the telephone system, we have to run it too high for the radio system. So it's picking up more background noise than it should if it was just a radio or just a telephone. And I think the new IP-based, because we've got an IP-based phone and an analog radio, I think when we're both in an IP-based configuration, we can get that gain to match out better. And Lee and I were talking about this earlier, and we're on the same software set that Huntsville Madison is using, and they're not having a similar problem. So I think that will help us significantly.
Is
We
there,
may
are
not-
they tile floor and walls and?
Yes. So we can talk offline about what can we do to improve the acoustics in that room. Carpet's really not the answer. And this room is a carbon copy of that room with a lot less glass. Hard surfaces and parallel lines are what make noise reverberation. So there's all kind of goodies and things that we can do to improve that you don't have the pitfall of a carpeted surface 24/7, people eating, dropping this. I've done 9 new nine-one centers in the last 10 years, and we haven't put carpet in anymore.
You know, acoustical tile and some little curtains that hang down would fix a lot of that problem,
There
be a
are
lot
things
cheaper.
that, I believe there are things that we can do for reasonable amounts of money that would improve the acoustics
That's all I wanna see done.
more than carpet.
You hear it sound like a party in the background when they're talking on the radio. You call in a 911 call and they can't hear you for the noise in the background.
I'm comfortable that collectively we can come up with options to present to you that would be more effective.
So we have a motion on the table, a motion by Mr. Campbell to table item number 2.
Second.
Motion second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that doesn't bring us to any other comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Chief, are y'all paying that?